British lawmakers have given their blessing to begin the exit from the European Union. It's now up to the Prime Minister to make Brexit mean Brexit. If she's not careful, Brexit will mean breakup, a Scottish breakup. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. This is The Day.
I will now take the steps necessary that will enable the Scottish Parliament to legislate for an independence referendum.
The tunnel vision that the SNP has shown today is deeply regrettable.
Scotland being taken out of the EU against our will.
This is at a time when the evidence is that the Scottish people, majority of the Scottish people, do not want a second independence referendum.
The Scottish Government's mandate for offering this choice is beyond doubt.
So instead of playing politics with the future of our country,
A choice of whether to follow the UK to a hard Brexit
the Scottish Government should focus on delivering good government and public services for the people of Scotland.
or to become an independent country.
Politics is not a game. Thank you.
Also on the day, tough talking Turkey. President Erdogan tells his country that Germany is supporting terrorism. The war of words coming up later in the program. We begin the day with a nod to Brexit while staring at Scotland. Just hours ago, British lawmakers passed a bill allowing the Prime Minister to trigger the country's exit from the European Union. It takes the Prime Minister, Theresa May, a major step closer to officially commencing negotiations with the EU. The clock then begins ticking for 2 years. However, Britain learned today that its near future will not only be about a departure from the EU, it could also be about the breakup of the United Kingdom. Today, Scotland Prime Minister Nicola Sturgeon announced that she will seek a second independence referendum as early as next year. For Scotland, Brexit could mean exiting the United Kingdom. We're going to have more on that in just a moment. First, here's Britain's Brexit minister with a warning to Parliament.
The government will be undertaking these negotiations and must have the freedom to walk away from a deal which sets out to punish the UK for leaving for decision to leave the EU, as some in Europe have suggested. Now, of course, we are seeking a mutually beneficial new relationship we believe can and will work for everyone. But tying the government's hands in this way could be the worst way of trying to achieve that deal.
All right, from the House of Parliament here at the big table in the studio with me is the Berlin correspondent of Britain's The Times newspaper, David Charter. He is also the author of In or Out, which is considered a primer, or these days the Bible, on everything Brexit. David, it's good to have you back on the show. So, what did we see today? Has Parliament, first of all, has Parliament tied the hands of the Prime Minister when she goes to the negotiating table?
What happened today was exactly the opposite. There was a fear amongst the government that their hands would be tied by these two amendments, one to have a vote in Parliament before the final deal and one to secure the rights of the EU citizens, the 3 million EU citizens in Britain. But as we speak, those amendments have been voted down in the Commons. It's now gone to the House of Lords, and we don't expect the House of Lords to put up any further resistance. So Theresa May will have a free hand, it's what she wanted, in the negotiations, and she will trigger those negotiations before the end of the month.
And right, so she is now on schedule.
She's back on track.
Right, which
Yes.
is what she wanted, right?
Yes.
Why has the question of residency rights for EU nationals, why has it become so controversial in Britain?
It became one of the key issues for the people who are opposed, really, to leaving the EU. But also, I think some people who voted to leave have some sympathy with this argument because it's an argument about fairness. It's an argument about what kind of country is Britain going to be when it leaves the European Union. Is it going to be an open and welcoming country, or is it going to be an extremely closed country for foreigners, for people who want to come and work and pursue their careers and their lives in Britain? And it's caused an awful lot of uncertainty. There are 3 million people who don't know exactly what their status will be and still don't know.
And what about the Brexiteers? Are they having to eat a little bit of humble pie? Because at the end of the day, what's being asked of them is to to adopt EU laws and make them British laws protecting these nationals?
Right. Well, what's going to happen during this Brexit process is that all of the laws made by the EU will be co-opted by the British government. And in fact, it's a necessary step. It may sound like humble pie to some, but you cannot run a multitude of things in Britain without adopting the EU regulations for running them, from abattoirs to zoos, literally from A to Z. It's all got to be regulated and inspected, and it's all done through EU regulations. Then the process will start in the years to come of selecting which ones to repeal and throw out or change.
David, stand by. We're going to come back to you in just a moment. We want to take a closer look now at the situation of the more than 3 million EU nationals currently living in the UK. Now, their fate, as David was saying, is uncertain. Many fear that Brexit will mean that they are suddenly aliens in a legal Britain that they did not ask to enter. But as DW's reporter Birgit Moss found out, some are already voting with their feet.
Moving house always means big decisions, like which teddy bears will make the trip to Dublin.
Okay, which ones?
Rosa McNamara has been a leading emergency physician in a university hospital in London for 4 years. But the Brexit vote changed things. She and her family don't feel as welcome in Britain as they once did.
For me, the uncertainty around trying to plan for their future if we were to stay here is one of the big motivators. But for the two of them, I don't really know what the implications are for them if they stay on here for secondary, for third level. What are they going to be allowed to do? Will it disadvantage them?
Clara and Morgan are now being registered to go to school in Dublin. Their father, also a senior physician, has already found a job there. Polls suggest roughly half the doctors in Britain with EU passports are considering leaving.
I spoke to some of my junior doctors from around Europe recently. I think it's been a topic on pretty much every shift, is that kind of uncertainty. So even though they've been here nearly all their lives, they are seeking employment lawyers, trying to work out what their immigration status is, getting legal opinion about getting British residency.
Over 130,000 EU citizens are employed in the British National Health Service, or NHS. Due to an acute staff shortage, conditions are increasingly strained.
I've just come out of hospital after a couple of weeks, and it was quite poor, the care, because of the situation where the lack of nurses.
The NHS is already short-staffed and underfunded, and I don't know what they're going to do if they're even further short-staffed.
Oh, it would collapse. I mean, in January I was in hospital and I was treated by 3 European doctors.
The British government is planning to train more doctors in order to become more self-sufficient in the future. However, it will take years until these doctors will be fully qualified. And the British Medical Association is warning that in the meantime, patients could find themselves in disastrous situations. Tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets to raise the alarm about missing hospital beds and waiting periods that can last months. Rafael Weber is a psychiatrist who's worked in London for 30 years. In his view, the government should issue a formal guarantee to all EU citizens residing presently in the UK.
We are being used as bargaining chips for a perceived possible political gain in a future negotiation with the EU, which I think is simply wrong.
Although Downing Street maintains that EU citizens already here can stay in Britain, many doctors aren't so sure if they believe that.
The work has been very challenging lately, and when you are working in a system which is really difficult, and on top of that you're told that you're not wanted, then it's not a difficult decision to feel that you're being pushed out. It's not a difficult decision to leave.
The McNamara family will leave for Ireland in a few weeks, to their old home, where they know they will be made to feel welcome.
Perfect. Okay.
Well, independence for Scotland has been thrown back onto the agenda with an announcement today in Edinburgh. Now, Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon says that she is going to seek a second referendum on leaving the UK. Now, part of the reason are you guessed it, concerns over Brexit, which the majority of Scots voted against. Here's part of what Sturgeon had to say today.
I will now take the steps necessary to make sure that Scotland will have a choice at the end of this process. A choice of whether to follow the UK to a hard Brexit or to become an independent country, able to secure a real partnership of equals with the rest of the UK and our own relationship with Europe.
All right, I'm back here at the big table now with David Charter from the Times newspaper. So, David, the Scots voted, what was it, just a few years ago on independence?
2014, they voted by 55 to 45 against independence. So it was quite a clear vote, actually.
And now Nicola Sturgeon says that now she has public opinion in favour of independence. Is she telling the truth?
Well, there are different ways of looking at this. And the way that the British government looks at it is that the result from 2014 was, as we know, 3 years ago. Since then, there's been a new elections to the Parliament in Scotland, Holyrood, and the Scottish nationalists have lost their overall majority. However, Nicola Sturgeon could argue that she has a majority in that Parliament for independence because the Greens, the very few Green MPs, support independence. But the key to this is that the Scottish referendum can only go ahead with the permission of the Prime Minister and Westminster. So it has to be Theresa May who gives the green light. And she didn't today look like she wanted to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take a look at what Britain's Prime Minister had to say today when she heard the word from Scotland.
The tunnel vision that the SNP has shown today is deeply regrettable. It sets Scotland on a course for more uncertainty and division, creating huge uncertainty. And this is at a time when the evidence is that the Scottish people, majority of the Scottish people, do not want a second independence referendum. So instead of playing politics with the future of our country, the Scottish Government should focus on delivering good government and public services for the people of Scotland. Politics is not a game.
Well, those were clear words there. You know, mind your own business and get back to work. I'm just wondering, can Theresa May, though, resist the pressure that is bound to grow as the whole Brexit process moves on?
I mean, what's really angered the Scottish is that the white paper that the British government launched on Brexit said quite clearly, we are going to leave the single market.
Yes.
We're not going to try and be like Norway. We're going to have a foot inside the EU, if you like. We're going to make a clean break. And that is seen as what's known as a hard Brexit, which is the Scots didn't want. The Scots gave an indication they might be prepared to go along with a closer relationship. But that has given the momentum to the Scottish campaign. But what I think is an open question, we've seen them debating about whether who has public opinion behind them, and opinion polls have gone both ways. It really is an open question whether those Scots who, for example, wanted to stay with Britain in the United Kingdom, but also wanted to stay with the European Union, whether staying with the European Union is more important to them.
I'm just wondering, are we looking at a kind of a perfect storm here? For Theresa May, you've got hard Brexit talks ahead in Brussels. You've got, the Scots pushing for independence at home, and all she needs now are calls for Irish reunification in Northern Ireland. How likely do you think that is?
That is not impossible, I have to say. I was very surprised after the Brexit vote when Northern Ireland, like Scotland, had a majority for staying with the European Union, where Ian Paisley Jr., the son of a leading unionist figure, advised the citizens in Northern Ireland to apply for Irish passports, which they're entitled to do. And that was a very surprising move, but it was in order to maintain the benefits of being an EU citizen, having a passport that's in the EU. And that suggests to me that there is movement possible on this United Ireland issue.
Just 10 seconds, yes or no, will the Brexit talks be finished in 2 years as they're supposed to be?
Yes, I think they will be. I think Britain is leaving the EU on the 1st of April 2019.
All right. Direct words there from David Charter. As always, David, we appreciate your insights. Thank you very much.